Jake had been a paramedic for nearly a decade, long enough to know that most people's worst nights all started the same way, with a phone call in the dark. But even he remembered the call from Miller's Road. It came in at 2:03 a.m. Single vehicle accident, the dispatcher said over the radio. Possible fatality. Miller's Road near the old bridge. Jake and his partner, Maria, exchanged a glance. That stretch of highway was miles from anywhere. Twisting roads, thick woods, no streetlights. The kind of place that always felt wrong. By the time they reached the scene, the fog was so thick their headlights barely cut through it. The car sat crumpled against a tree at the edge of the woods, headlights still on. Driver's door cracked open like someone had tried to get out. The only sound was the hissing of the engine and the faint creak of cooling metal. Jake called out. No answer. The driver was a woman in her 30s, unconscious, slumped across the steering wheel. Blood streaked her forehead where she hit the glass. But the windshield was strange. It wasn't just broken. It was blown outward, as though something had come from inside the car. Jake and Maria got the door open and eased her onto the stretcher. As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, Jake kept glancing at the tree line. He could swear something was there. Tall, motionless, watching. But when he shone his flashlight that way, there was nothing but fog and black trees. Maria climbed in back with the woman while Jake drove. Halfway to the hospital, Maria leaned forward. Jake, she said slowly, she's breathing again. Jake felt relief wash through him, until Maria added, she's whispering something. He glanced in the mirror. The woman's eyes were open now, wide, unblinking, staring at the ceiling like she was seeing something the rest of them couldn't. Maria leaned closer to hear, then froze. She just said your name, Maria whispered. Jake nearly slammed on the brakes. He had never seen this woman before. How could she know his name? Then she whispered again, voice trembling, barely audible. Jake, it's behind you. The temperature in the cab plummeted. Maria's breath fogged in the air. Jake, don't look, she whispered. But he couldn't help himself. He looked in the rearview mirror. And for a split second, just beyond the stretcher, something leaned out of the shadows. A face, grinning. Too wide. Eyes black as oil. And then, nothing. The monitor flatlined. The woman was gone. But Maria swore she heard someone laughing in the dark corners of the ambulance as they pulled into the ER bay. 2 days later, Jake read the police report. The car had hit a tree at 60 miles per hour. But investigators found something else at the scene. A second set of tire tracks, leading off into the woods. And stopping. No car was ever found. The final note in the report made Jake's blood run cold. Witness states headlights seen leaving the scene, but no vehicle present when officers arrived. 6 months later, Jake quit the job. Couldn't handle night calls anymore. But some nights, driving home alone, he swears he sees headlights in the mirror. Always the same distance back. Always following. And sometimes, when the road curves and the trees close in, he thinks he hears breathing in the back seat. Sam had been a paramedic for 5 years. He had responded to shootings, car wrecks, and calls in neighborhoods so dangerous that even the police hesitated before entering. But the only call that truly haunted him came from Briarwood Care Home and from Room 6. It was 1:45 a.m. when dispatch sent them out. Unresponsive patient, the radio crackled. Briarwood Care Home, Room 6. Sam's partner, Derek, groaned. That place again? Sam frowned. You've been there? Twice, Derek said. They always call about the same room. Staff hate going in there at night. They arrived 10 minutes later. The care home stood at the edge of town, a squat brick building with only a few lights burning in the windows. The halls smelled faintly of antiseptic and something older, like mildew and dust. The night nurse led them down the corridor, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's room 6, she said. "End of the hall." As they walked, Sam noticed something odd. All the other room doors had nameplates, flowers taped up, family photos outside. But room 6 was bare. The door looked older than the others. Different paint, rusted hinges. And the temperature dropped the moment they stepped inside. An elderly man lay motionless on the bed, eyes closed, skin pale and thin as paper. But that wasn't what made Sam's stomach twist. It was the feeling. Like someone else was in the room, watching. Derek checked vitals while Sam set up the monitor. "Unresponsive," Derek muttered. "Let's get him loaded." But as they lifted the man onto the stretcher, Sam heard it. A whisper. Right next to his ear. "Don't take him." He spun around. No one there. They wheeled the man down the hallway toward the ambulance. The night nurse stayed behind, crossing herself as the stretcher rolled away. "Why do they hate this room?" Sam asked Derek quietly. Derek shook his head. "Don't know. Last time I was here, the nurse said people see things in there. Staff refused to work the night shift alone. Halfway to the hospital, the monitor flatlined. They began CPR as the siren wailed through the empty streets. And that was when the man sat up. Not fully, just halfway, head lifting slowly, eyes still closed. "Sir, stay still!" Derek shouted, trying to hold him down. But the man's lips moved, and in a dry, rasping voice he whispered, "He doesn't want me to leave." Sam felt the hair rise on his arms. "Who?" he asked before he realized what he was saying. The man's mouth opened wider than it should have, like his jaw might break. And then he screamed, not in pain, but in pure animal terror. By the time they reached the hospital, the man was gone. Doctors tried everything. Nothing worked. When Sam filled out the paperwork, the nurse glanced at the address. "Briarwood?" she said softly. "Room 6? Sam nodded. The nurse shivered. "You paramedics keep bringing them in from there. They always die before morning." Weeks later, Sam drove past Briarwood and saw police cars out front. The building had been shut down. Too many unexplained deaths. Room 6, they said, was always the common factor. One officer told him staff claimed the door sometimes locked on its own, that people inside swore they heard someone else breathing in the dark. But the worst story? A nurse who quit said she saw someone standing in the corner of room 6 one night. Someone tall. Not the patient, watching her. Sam never went back. But some nights, when calls come in from that side of town, he swears he hears a voice on the radio, faint under the static, whispering, "Don't take him." Tom had been a paramedic for nearly 12 years. He thought he had heard everything. Screams from accident victims, last words whispered through broken teeth, even the eerie silence that follows when there's nothing left to save. But the one sound he could never forget was the night he heard voices in the back of his own ambulance. It was just after 3 a.m. when the radio crackled. Transfer from County Hospital to St. Mary's ICU, non-emergency, one patient stable. Tom sighed with relief. A routine transport. No flashing lights, no frantic race against the clock. His partner, Lisa, yawned in the passenger seat as they pulled into the hospital bay. The patient was a man in his 40s, unconscious but breathing fine, hooked to monitors and a portable oxygen tank. The nurse handed over paperwork with the usual line, "Smooth ride, okay?" Tom nodded, always. They loaded the man into the back, Lisa staying with him while Tom drove. The first few miles were uneventful. Dark highway, empty fields stretching into nothing, occasional streetlights casting weak pools of light. Then, 10 minutes in, Lisa leaned forward. "Tom," she said slowly, "do you hear that?" He turned down the radio. At first there was nothing. Then he heard it. A faint voice, muffled, coming from the back of the ambulance. But it wasn't the patient. The words were too fast, too distorted, like whispers played backward on a tape. Lisa checked the patient, still unconscious, monitors steady. The voice came again, clearer this time. Low, urgent, like someone whispering right into her ear. Her eyes darted to the corners of the ambulance. Empty. She grabbed the radio. "Tom, pull over, I keep hearing..." Another voice cut her off. This one came from the opposite corner. Lisa froze. Two voices now, whispering over each other. Neither belonged to the patient nor anyone alive. Tom pulled onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. He climbed into the back. "Probably the radio," he muttered. "Interference or something." But the voices didn't stop. They seemed to circle the ambulance now, hissing in words too fast to understand. Then just for a moment, Tom caught a phrase. "He's ours." Lisa's face went white. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Before Tom could answer, the patient sat bolt upright, eyes still closed, mouth moving. And in a perfect imitation of the whispering voices, he said, "He's coming." The monitors flatlined. Lisa started compressions as Tom floored the gas toward St. Mary's. But the voices grew louder. Now they came from outside, above, beneath the floor. The ambulance shook violently as if something huge was climbing across the roof. Then the headlights caught something on the road ahead. A figure, standing in the middle of the lane. Tall, motionless, arms too long, head tilted at an impossible angle, and just as suddenly it was gone. The road ahead was empty again. They reached St. Mary's at 3:42 a.m. The patient was pronounced dead on arrival. As they cleaned the back of the ambulance, Lisa pointed to the fogged-up rear window. Words were written there. 4 letters. Tom transferred to desk duty a month later, but sometimes when he drives at night, he swears he hears voices behind him, whispering, waiting. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.